So far as my collection goes, one of the houses that I have probably a large number of, they probably make up the largest number as far as of any single house in my collection. It is the House of Lattafa, right? If you've known my journey as far as just me starting into being a fragrance enthusiast, collector, all that fun stuff, and even now as content creator, one of the things you have probably seen is that I have kind of an affinity for Lattafas. Now, there's other things that, especially as my nose grows, I'm getting my nose on. As far as other things that I'm really becoming interested in, there's lots of other houses, but Lattafa really right now probably still has the bulk of, not the bulk, but it has a nice foothold or footprint within my collection. And so therefore I figured it's time to do another ranking for the House of Lattafa fragrances that I have. I think I do this every quarter. So this will be updated from the last time I did it, like in June or July, whenever that was. So this is going to be my ranking, my top 15 from the House of Lattafa. Stick around. The top 5 is going to be really interesting. All right. All right, what's good, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevin, and you're watching Smell Goods. I appreciate you coming through. Appreciate you hanging out with me for a little bit as we talk through and discuss more fragrances. That's kind of what we do, hence the name Smell Goods, right? If this is your first time, listen, do me the honor, hit that like, hit that subscribe, request notifications, and then meet me in the comments. Those notifications are going to be helpful because you want to find your way back here for more of the content that we do. If you're part of the Smell Good squad, if you have been here before, appreciate you coming back through. We got some more stuff to talk about. All right. As I mentioned, Lattafa is one of it has probably the biggest footprint of any house in my collection right now. I've got probably about on the order of about maybe 40 bottles. That includes Maison Alhambra, the Niche Imrani line, all of that fun stuff, right? So I'm going to give you my top 15 fragrances from Lattafa. But y'all know that whole thing of trying to give you, this is my number 1, my number 2. I don't know that I have the time, the patience, or the mental wherewithal right now to try and put all of that together like that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to compromise. You ready? Here's the compromise. Okay. I'm going to give you the top 15. In other words, out of my collection of Lattafas, these are going to be my top 15 for sure. I'm not going to necessarily break it down and say this is number 15, this is number 14, this is number whatever, right? Not going to do that, but I will also just, if you stick around, the last 5 that I give you will definitely be the top 5 that I have or that I feel at this time. And as always, I reserve the right to change my mind. Don't jump in the comments talking about in the last Lattafa ranking that you did a year ago, you said this was your number 1. Yes, things change. My nose has changed, but also Lattafa's put out some other stuff that could have replaced some stuff. So stick around. You'll see where maybe one of your favorites lie, but also what I think right now are the top 5 that I have for me as I give you also my top 15. All right. We good? Cool. All right. Copacetic, fun. Yeah. All hearts and minds clear. I'm gonna give you every little thing I can give you. All right, here we go. So not in any particular order, but these first 10 are going to be top 15, but in the lower 2/3 of my top 15. So numbers 6 through 15, I guess. All right. First one up is from the House of Maison Alhambra, which is the division, of course, of Lattafa. This is Afro Leather. Afro Leather. This is their take on African Leather by Mimo Paris. Bottle is very similar. You still got that little tiger or cheetah, whatever, on the bottle. Just a beautiful fragrance. Lattafa's, their take on it is very nicely done, but I still do want the OG. But this is definitely helping to scratch the itch for the season. But it's the one that kind of got me, as far as even the name, got me interested in what is African leather. I put nose on African leather and was like, yeah, I gotta have that. But this right here does a nice job. Just a nice fragrance. Works really well in kind of the fall time for me. But this is definitely one of my top 15. This is Maison Alhambra Afro Leather. All right. Next one up is one that, again, is a nice one. Does a pretty good job. This one is, again, this is Liam Gray. And this is their take on, Gris Chanel, right? BDK's Gris Chanel. Just that nice tea. I think there's fig in this as well. Yeah, this right here I got this maybe about a few months into my journey when it came. Well, I don't even know when it came out, but when I got this, I was like, enjoy it. I definitely still am probably looking at getting Gris Chanel, the straight version, just because that's very nice, very potent and everything. But this does a good job of getting you in that space, getting you in that zone of Gris Chanel. So if you're looking for something like that, this is definitely top 15 for me. Again, Liam Gray from the house, of course, of Lattafa. All right. Another one that is an oldie that, of course, I know has been in my previous list before because it is a mainstay in my opinion. It is one that I think is, they kind of did their thing with this. We're talking about the Bade Al Oud for Glory, and this is their take on Oud for Greatness. Definitely just gets that in that space, gets in that moment there. The oud is not overly powerful as far as an animalic oud or anything of that nature, at least not to my nose. I think lavender, saffron, nutmeg, some of those things in there does really well. Definitely works for me for just kind of out and about, especially during the fall and winter. But this is definitely top 15. I'm not going to say this will always be top 15, but it definitely has, even though it's kind of dropped in my rankings because other things have come along, it's still hung in there as far as being one of my top fragrances from Lattafa, even though there's some new stuff that came out that was really great. But again, Oud for Glory, the Bade Al Oud for Glory from Lattafa is definitely a top 15 fragrance. All right, let's go here. Let's go into, now this one, the apple Shisha Accord. This is Mashrabia from Lattafa. This is their take on Smoking Hot by Killian. Very nice, very seductive type fragrance. This does pretty good job of getting in the closeness of it, the approximation of it. And this is one that came out, I think late last year sometime. It definitely has made its way. This, I would easily say, is probably a top 10 fragrance for me, even though I'm just giving you the bottom part of the top 15. But I think I could get away with saying this would probably sit in my top 15. In fact, if I'm honest, yeah, this was one that I grabbed and I was like, I went back and forth, but it's definitely in the top 15, probably in the top 10. But this is Mashrabia from Lattafa. Let it focus there. All right, perfect. Next one up is one that every time I talk about this, I just kind of tell the story about how it does everything you want a good fragrance to do. One, it smells really good, smells really amazing. It lasts and it projects nicely. This is a room shifter by the name of Ymir. And this is their take on Clyde Christian's Town and Country. Very nice for me, elevated citrus woods type of a fragrance. Kind of for me just feels more at home. At weddings, at banquets, at that type of thing, but also just out Saturday on a brunch date or something like that. This also could work as well. But this is a top 15 fragrance for sure. I think this was definitely in my top 10 the last time I did this, but yeah, it's still up there as far as one of my top ones. Again, from the house of Lattafa, Ymir. Next one up is one that I don't think was in my, I don't know if I'd gotten it or if I'd really spent time with it, but we're talking about Jasur. Show you the bottle. Jasur. So this is their take on Valentino Born in Roma Coral Fantasy, if I remember correctly. Does a really, really good job of getting in that space, really good job of getting in that vicinity of it. Probably about 85 to 90% for me, as far as where it sits in relation to the OG. For me, this definitely scratches the itch. It definitely, because Valentino Born in Roma Coral Fantasy is a great fragrance. It's not something I'm running out to get. This definitely helps to satisfy that itch. Definitely kind of just takes the place of it for right now. Don't know if I'll ever get the OG, but for right now, this does a really good job and is another one of my top 15 fragrances. Again, we're talking Jasur from Lattafa. Next one up, we'll go with, I want to make sure I'm not missing everything. Yep. All right. Next one up is Art of Universe. Now, this is a sweeter version, in my opinion, of Blue Talisman. This gets the Blue Talisman DNA, but it sweetens it up a little, right? Definitely one that does a good job, does a nice job of performance, not beast mode as far as what I've gotten, average performer, decent as far as its projection, things of that nature. But I do like this interpretation of Blue Talisman. Again, not a one-to-one, a little sweeter than the original Blue Talisman. My wife really likes this one because when I brought home some tester strips of Blue Talisman and I showed her this, she was like, yeah, I like this too. So this definitely fits the bill. Definitely does what we want it to do. So from the Lattafa Pride line, Art of Universe, it's going to be top 15, and it is, again, their take on Blue Talisman. All right. Next one up is one that may come as a surprise, just because I know for sure in one of my previous ones, this was like the number one. And I probably at that time, just because I was early on in my fragrance journey, early on in my content creation, I may have made the statement of, this will always be my number one. Forgive me, I was wrong. All right. But that doesn't mean that this still is not a great fragrance. It still is in my top 15. It still is up there as a great fragrance from the house of Lattafa. And so the one that we're talking about is Eternal Oud. This is their take on Grand Soir by MFK. It still slaps. It still rocks. This still does what you want it to do. It still smells great. But it's just dropped a little as far as where it is. This one probably would still be top 10-ish. But yeah, there's the plum that I think that kind of just does a little tweak on this versus Grand Soir. Still, as far as performance, performs well, lasts a long time. The longevity on this is, as the name says, it's eternal. But yeah, in fact, I might have to break this out again as we're moving more into the fall and winter. But again, another top 15 for me is Eternal Oud from Lattafa. All right. And then now I think I've given you all except my top 6. So I'm going to give you the one that was almost top 6. It's top 5. It was this close. So if I could tell you, okay, if I'm going to tell you, this would be probably the number 6 fragrance on my list if I were doing it, right? Just because I did go back and forth between this and one other fragrance, right? But the one that is number 6 for me, or the one that I'm going to say is going to end off my my topic of the top, or the lower 2/3 of my top 15, as it were, is going to be Lattafa's Camera Dukan. Now, I don't think any top list of Lattafa is going to be complete without having a Camera on there. You've got 3 great choices. You have the original Camera, you have Camera Kawa, which is more coffee based, and then you have this one, which is a little more spicy with some tobacco, right? This is the one that for me just really works well. It's the one that for me just kind of, it wears more masculine for me. They all could kind of go either way, right? The original Kamo is just very, very sweet. My wife really enjoys it on me. So yeah, I'll wear that when she wants me to wear it. But this one is one that I would just rock just because, just a nice, cool fall, winter evening. This is one that I would wear and reach for a little more than I would for Camera, the original Camera. But again, the one that I'm going to say rounds out my lower 2/3 of my top 15 is going to be Camera Dukan. Camera Dukan. All right. So now, with that said, these next 5 are going to be my top 5. These next 5 are definitively top 5 fragrances from Lattafa for me. Now, I'm not going to say my number 1, number 2. Not going to do that. Still not going to do that, right? But I am going to give you the ones that for me are top 5 from Lattafa. These are the ones that either they're just great smelling scents, they're perfect, they're really nicely done, they're unique, they do exactly what they're supposed to be cloning as far as getting that DNA in such a way that it's like, yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head, or these have also been just great compliment factors for me. And they all just smell really good. All right. So again, not in any particular order. Lattafa, the Kingdom. Their take on JPG Lamel Elixir. This one for me for last fall and winter was a compliment magnet. It was a compliment beast. I mean, walking through the grocery store with my wife and someone like, hey, you smell good. I had that happen at least twice. I know for sure, as far as just in the grocery store at Sprouts of all places, right? But even at church, even at other things that we were going to when I was wearing this, compliments were just coming left and right with this. So it has to find a place in my top 5. Lattafa's The Kingdom. All right. Next one is one that if you've been on my channel, you know kind of my affinity for this one. This is doing its take on Initio Paragon, and we're talking vintage radio. And in my opinion, I don't think any ranking of Lattafa, even if it's not your top 5, not your top 10, your top 15 has to include this, in my opinion. Vintage radio just does it really well. But I am going to look at you a little suspect if it's not in your top 10 at least. That's just me. I might look at you a little suspect. You tell me. All right. But again, this one does a really good job. It definitely comfortably sits within my top 5. This was one that I grabbed and didn't have to think about it. I knew that this was going to be a top 5 fragrance from Lattafa for me. Again, we're talking vintage radio. Which brings us to the other 3. And again, even though I just tried to build a little suspense, this does not mean these are the top 3 out of my Lattafas. These are just the remaining 3 out of my top 15. Gotcha. All right. So next one up is going to be, you have to have an Assad also. I think you have to have an Assad just because it is a classic or definitive line, if as it were, for Lattafa, especially when you get into the fact that they have both the male and the female versions of on the Assad line. Now, if we're honest though, as far as the guys, there's really only 2 choices, because that Zanzibar, that ain't it. That's not the move. In fact, I'll probably declutter that soon. All right. But as far as in my top 5 from Lattafa, we have Assad Bourbon. Assad Bourbon. Now, this, I don't think, again, I still don't think that this is a direct clone of anything. It just sits very nicely in that sweet designer fragrance type of space. As like your most wanted, as you know, I'm trying to think what else, but it kind of sits in that space. It's not, in my opinion, trying to be an official take on something. I think they just kind of like, let's see what we can do and go after something as far as just kind of that scent profile. So definitely sits very nicely in my top 5. Definitely one that when I got it, I was like, yeah, that's going to change up. I even knew then when I got it, I knew that it would change up my rankings as far as where this would sit. So again, Lattafa Assad Bourbon is another one that you've got to have in your top 5, or that's in my top 5, I should say. And now the next 2, and I'll even say these next 2, probably they are competing for number 1 and 2, right? I'll at least give you that. These 2 are probably right now, the way I'm feeling, the way I'm looking at these fragrances, the way that I appreciate them. These probably, in all honesty, are probably sitting 1 and 2, but I'm not going to say which one is 1, which one is 2. They're both kind of up there as far as probably solidly being considered for 1 and 2. First one up is, again, from Lattafa. This is Teriyaki Intense. This right here, again, an original take. It's to give you kind of a scent profile that it kind of sits in the space of. This might be, this could have been its own kind of flanker, as it were, within the Camera line, just because to give you something of kind of the scent profile that it sits in. This is not a flanker to Camera. This is not a reinvention or reinterpretation of Camera. This is, in my opinion, its own thing. But just to kind of give you where it sits as far as the type of sweetness, the type of fragrance that this is, the plum liqueur in this is just phenomenal. This is one of their really good works. This is one that comfortably sits in top 5, comfortably, and also is, as I mentioned, in consideration for 1 versus 2. It's that good. But again, Lattafa's Teriyaki Intense is the one that we're going to give you as far as what would be our number or in our top 5. We're just going to leave it at that. And then the last one, I even put out a video asking, was this the new king of Lattafa? Just because this was really well done. It was one that I was like, I know it's going to be a struggle to do my top 5, my top whatever I do with Lattafa, just because this changed the game for me for Lattafa. This is one that to me takes Lattafa up a notch as far as just kind of their blending, as far as their production, as far as how they did it. This did a really good job. I am talking about from Lattafa. This is Dynasty. Now, again, there's still debate. I think, and I'd have to get a sample of African Rubios, but I think it leans more towards the red tea vetiver. That's just my personal opinion, just looking at the notes and things. But either way, this is a nice raspberry tea with a little ginger, I think, in this. Just a nice, beautiful fragrance that is done very, very well. That for me, it just shows another level of quality that Lattafa has been taking. They've been jumping up their quality. And that's part of why you see such a change in some of the fragrances that I have. It's because in some respects, their quality has gotten better. They're using, I think they're using better oils and better ingredients and things of that nature. So the quality has gone up. And so because the quality has gone up, and because my nose is shifting, and because I'm doing things to like train my nose and really get a better, be better at what I want to do as far as these fragrance things. It stands to reason that because I can recognize sometimes the quality difference, that now my rankings kind of reflect that as well. So again, top 15, top 5 is going to be Dynasty from Lattafa. All right, that's it. I think we got through it. I think I gave you all 15. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know where your 15 would rank, or even if you just give your top 5, whatever it may be. Let me know if you agree or disagree, or if you're like, Kevin, you missed it. You should have had Here Legacy as your number 1. All right. But here's the thing. As always, jump in the comments. Let's talk about it. Let's see what's going on. Let's debate. Let's have conversation. Let's see what you got. All right. And then there's a video here for you to check out. Make sure you're hitting that like, subscribe, requesting notifications, and all of that fun stuff. And then I'll see you in the next video. Have a great one. Be blessed. Deuces.